inside my stuff when I printed it.
It is.
It said 2023. You're out of date there.
Oh, I haven't changed that part. This is my own stuff. Thank you. Okay, so if we want to solve by square rooting, we need to complete the square. In order to complete the square, we need to set up our equation so we can figure it out, and that setup will look like this. 1x squared plus something x, then leave a space, equals something, then leave a space again. So the first thing is that green number 1, you don't want any numbers in front of the x squared. In A, there's a half. What could you possibly do to get rid of that half in the equation? You would have to multiply by 2. So you multiply this whole side by 2, and you multiply this whole side by 2. If I do that, I would get x squared plus 6x minus 9 equals, it would still be 0. And it's nice that that actually got rid of all of our fractions. Now we need also to then just write the x squared plus 6x and leave a space. Move the 9 over and leave a space. And the x squared plus 6x, now we get to step 2 where we complete the square. It needs to be something perfectly squared. If your first term is an x squared, it has to be an x then. If the second one is a 6x, you have to imagine you have something times something. This number here and this number have to be the same, and your outside and inside need to make plus 6. What number would that be? Plus 3. And you might already be noticing that there's a pattern here between that number and what you need to get there. Have you noticed a pattern? Have you noticed that if you think outside and inside, you would need 2 of them to make the 6x. So does it make sense that this number here is always half or that divided by 2? That'll become important when it's a number that's not nice. Like might have to complete the square, and instead of plus 6x, which is easy to see is 3 and 3, it might be something like 17/5. And it's not as easy to see what 2 numbers that are the same that add up to 17/5. So this idea of dividing by 2 is important. Now, if it is going to be an x plus 3 squared, something has to go in this blue space in order that actually match up, and that would be, you actually squared it out at plus 9, which means I also have to add 9 to that side. Now that we've completed the square, we can get rid of the square by square rooting. So I square root this side, just becomes x plus 3. I square root this side, I don't forget the plus or minus. And I can get the x by itself by subtracting 3 on both sides. Square root of 18. Have to be able to reduce that to lowest terms. Is 3 root 2. And this is our solution to A. Then in B, notice we have a number in front of the x squared. So we would need to get rid of that. In order to get rid of that, we need to divide by 5. Now if you divide a whole side by -5, that would divide each of these by -5. What does that give us in the end? That'll give us an 1x squared. -10 divided by -5 is plus 2x. And 2 divided by -5 is -2/5. And 0 divided by -5 is still 0. I've almost got this set up. I take the x squared and the 2x and leave a space. I move the 2/5 over to the other side and leave a space. So you might have fractions, it says, in our steps. In this case, we do have a fraction. Now you need something squared to give you x squared plus 2x. Obviously you need an x. And this number, the only way to get the outside and the inside to give you the plus 2x, plus 1. And again, 2 divided by 2 is 1. Now if you had a plus 1 and you multiplied it out, in this space there would need to be a plus 1. Which means in this space there would need to be a plus 1. How do you add fractions? You need a common denominator. Are you okay that I do 1 as 5 over 5 in my head? And 2 over 5 plus 5 over 5 will give me 7 over 5. Perfect. Okay? Now we've got a single square, so we can square root both sides. Don't forget the plus or minus. Now, square root of a fraction is the same as a square root of 7 over square root of 5. So now we've got x by itself. We have solved for x, but this isn't simplified because we learned in our square root equation, you are not allowed to have square roots on the bottom in a simplified equation. So we have to rationalize the denominator. How do we rationalize the denominator? We're going to have to multiply top and bottom by the square root of 5. This will give us x equals -1 plus or minus the square root of 35 over 5. Technically, this is not simplified. Because when you want an answer simplified, you want, if it has fractions, you want a single fraction. We have a fraction here and a number here. This is not a single fraction. How would I add these together? I would need a common denominator. Are you okay if I change my 1 to 5 over 5? And so I would get -5 plus or minus the square root of 35 all over 5. This is what would be necessary to have your answer in lowest terms. The square root of 35 doesn't simplify. So again, that's where our mental math comes in a lot, because you have to quickly check your square roots if there are perfect squares that divide them. Again, the textbook left your answer up here like this one, because it didn't know if it had taught you square roots yet. Because we've learned square roots, we have to write our final answer like this. Okay, circle questions 10 and 11.